She thought leaving was power. She believed the story would end with her walking away. But distance has a strange way of revealing truth. Growth happened in silence, strength replaced pain, and suddenly the glow she once ignored became impossible to overlook, a reminder that some lessons arrive far too late. Taking genuine love for granted is one of the quietest mistakes people make in relationships. It rarely happens suddenly. It grows slowly, almost invisibly. The way comfort turns into carelessness. In the beginning, everything feels precious. Every message matters. Every effort feels special. Every moment is appreciated. But over time, when someone consistently shows love, loyalty, and patience, it can start to feel normal. And when something becomes normal, people stop treating it like something valuable. Genuine love is often very simple. It is not loud, dramatic, or constantly demanding attention. It shows itself in small, consistent actions, being there during difficult days, listening without judgment, and protecting someone's peace instead of disturbing it, choosing respect even during disagreements. This kind of love is steady, calm, and reliable. But ironically, because it is so stable, people sometimes fail to recognize how rare it actually is. Many people are used to chaos in relationships. They confuse intensity with love and drama with passion. When someone offers calm loyalty instead of emotional games, it can feel less exciting. Instead of appreciating the stability, they begin to overlook it. A presence that once felt comforting starts to feel ordinary. Messages are replied to later. Efforts are acknowledged less. Gratitude slowly disappears. When someone knows that another person truly cares, they sometimes stop making the same effort in return. Not because they are cruel, but because they feel secure enough to believe that love will always remain there. They assume the other person will always understand, always forgive, always stay patient, and this assumption becomes the beginning of neglect. Respect is often the first thing that fades when love is taken for granted. Words become sharper, attention becomes weaker, little things that once mattered begin to feel unnecessary. Instead of appreciating loyalty, people start looking for excitement somewhere else. They begin to believe that there is always something better waiting outside the relationship. In reality, genuine love is one of the rarest things people encounter in life. Many relationships are built on temporary emotions, convenience, or personal benefit. But authentic care, where someone truly wants your peace, your growth, and your happiness, is something most people search for years without finding. Yet when it finally appears, it can be overlooked simply because it is calm rather than dramatic. Taking love for granted also happens when people start believing they deserve endless patience. They test boundaries without realizing the emotional cost. They cancel plans, ignore feelings, or behave in ways that slowly drain the other person's energy. Each small moment might seem insatiate. They build a quiet distance between two hearts. The painful truth is that people often recognize genuine love only after it is gone. When the constant presence disappears, the silence suddenly feels unfamiliar. The support that once felt automatic is no longer there. The comfort that once surrounded everyday life becomes a memory instead of a reality. Regret begins in these moments of realization. People start remembering the small gestures they ignored, a time someone waited patiently, the moments when someone chose understanding instead of anger. All those quiet acts of love that once felt ordinary suddenly appear extraordinary. But by the time appreciation finally arrives, circumstances may have already changed. A person who once gave endless patience may have learned the value of protecting their own peace. Growth sometimes happens through heartbreak. People who were once taken for granted often become stronger, wiser, and more aware of their worth. Genuine love teaches patience, but it also teaches self-respect. When someone constantly gives without receiving the same care in return, they eventually understand that love should not feel like emotional exhaustion. Real love requires appreciation from both sides. Without that balance, even the most sincere affection can slowly fade. Another reason people take love for granted is familiarity. When someone is always present, the human mind begins to treat their presence as permanent. But nothing in life is truly permanent unless it is valued and protected. Relationships need effort, the same way plants need water. Without attention, even the strongest connections can weaken desire. And sometimes some people believe that love will always survive neglect simply because the feelings were once strong. But feelings alone are not enough to sustain a relationship. Respect, gratitude, and emotional awareness are just as important. Without these elements, love slowly loses the warmth that once made it meaningful. Air is also a psychological comfort in believing that someone will never leave. When people feel emotionally secure, they sometimes stop investing energy into maintaining the connection. They assume loyalty means tolerance for everything, but loyalty does not mean accepting constant disregard. The tragedy of taking genuine love for granted is that it often replaces appreciation with assumption. Instead of seeing the person as a blessing, they become part of the background. Instead of expressing gratitude, people expect understanding. And over time, this imbalance quietly damages the relationship. True appreciation requires awareness. It means recognizing that someone's kindness, patience, and loyalty are choices they make every day. No one is obligated to keep loving endlessly without respect in return. When people understand this truth, they begin to treat genuine love with the care it deserves. Life has a strange way of teaching these lessons. Sometimes the absence of someone becomes the loudest reminder of their value. The quiet moments of reflection reveal how rare genuine love truly was. What once seemed ordinary becomes something deeply missed. Taking genuine love for granted is not always the result of bad intentions. Often it comes from emotional immaturity, distraction, or the illusion that time will always allow for appreciation later. But life does not always provide second chances to correct the mistakes made through neglect. The deepest irony is that the love people overlook is often the love that could have brought them the most peace. The quiet support, the steady presence, the sincere care, these are the foundations of lasting relationships. Yet many people chase excitement while ignoring stability. In the end, genuine love does not disappear because it was weak. It disappears because it was not valued when it needed to be. And once someone learns their worth after being taken for granted, they rarely return to a place where their presence was once treated like something ordinary. Choosing ego over emotional maturity is one of the most silent yet destructive decisions people make in relationships. It often does not look like a dramatic mistake in the moment. It appears small, almost harmless. A refusal to apologize, a need to prove a point, a desire to win an argument instead of protecting the relationship. But over time, these small moments reveal a deeper pattern where pride becomes more important than connection. Ego is built on the need to protect one's image. It whispers the idea that admitting fault is weakness. It convinces people that saying "I was wrong" somehow lowers their value. Emotional maturity, however, understands something very different. It understands that relationships are not battles to win, but spaces to grow, communicate, and protect each other's dignity. When ego leads the way, every disagreement becomes a competition. Instead of listening, people prepare their next response. Instead of trying to understand feelings, they search for ways to defend their own position. The focus shifts from solving the issue to protecting personal pride. And in that moment, the relationship quietly loses something important: safety. Emotional safety is what allows two people to be honest without fear. It is the environment where vulnerability can exist. But when ego dominates conversations, vulnerability becomes dangerous. One person speaks with honesty while the other reacts with defensiveness. Slowly, openness begins to disappear because honesty no longer feels safe. People often choose ego because it gives the illusion of control. Winning an argument can feel powerful in the moment. Proving someone wrong can satisfy the desire to feel superior, but the victory is temporary. What remains afterward is distance. Respect weakens when conversations turn into competitions rather than understanding. Emotional maturity requires a different kind of strength. It requires the ability to pause before reacting. It requires the courage to listen, even when the truth feels uncomfortable. Mature individuals recognize that being right is not always the most important thing. Sometimes protecting the relationship matters more than protecting personal pride. The challenge is that ego thrives on immediate emotional reactions. When someone feels criticized or misunderstood, the instinct is to defend. Words become sharper, tone becomes colder, tone becomes colder. Instead of asking questions, assumptions are made, and these reactions can create wounds that linger far longer than the original disagreement. Many relationships slowly break under the weight of repeat, like ego-driven conflicts, not because love disappears, but because respect begins to fade. When someone constantly prioritizes pride over empathy, the other person starts to feel unheard. Over time, feeling unheard can be more painful than the argument itself. Emotional maturity understands the power of accountability. It recognizes that every person makes mistakes. Accepting responsibility does not make someone weak, it makes them trustworthy. When someone can admit their faults openly, it builds confidence in the relationship. It shows that honesty matters more than maintaining a perfect image. Ego, on the other hand, resists accountability. It searches for excuses and justifications. Instead of acknowledging harm, it minimizes it. Instead of repairing the damage, it shifts blame. This behavior may protect pride temporarily, but it slowly damages the foundation of trust. Up. Trust is built through consistent emotional responsibility. When people know that their feelings will be taken seriously, they feel secure enough to stay open and connected. But when ego dominates interactions, emotional responsibility disappears. Conversations become tense and simple misunderstandings escalate into unnecessary conflicts. Another consequence of choosing ego over maturity is the inability to truly listen. Listening requires patience and humility. It requires accepting that another perspective might be valid, even if it is different. Ego struggles with this idea because it prefers certainty and dominance rather than shared understanding. Over time, repeated ego-driven responses can make someone feel invisible in the relationship. Their concerns are dismissed, their emotions are questions. Instead of feeling valued, they begin to feel like their voice does not matter. This quiet emotional neglect often becomes the beginning of deeper disconnection. Emotional maturity, in contrast, creates a space for growth. It recognizes that relationships are not perfect and that disagreements are natural. What matters is how those disagreements are handled. Mature individuals approach conflict with curiosity rather than hostility. They ask questions, clarify misunderstandings, and search for solutions instead of victories. Choosing humility over ego does not mean accepting disrespect. Choosing humility over ego does not mean accepting disrespect. Emotional maturity still maintains boundaries and self-respect. The difference is that mature responses are guided by intention rather than impulse. Instead of reacting immediately, there is reflection. Instead of attacking, there is communication. One of the most powerful qualities of emotional maturity is the willingness to repair damage. When mistakes happen, mature individuals take steps to rebuild trust. They apologize sincerely. They acknowledge the impact of their actions. They demonstrate through behavior that they are willing to learn and grow. Ego resists this process because it fears appearing flawed. It creates a defensive wall where vulnerability cannot enter. But relationships require vulnerability to survive. Without it, connections become superficial, built on appearances rather than genuine understanding. Sometimes people choose ego because they fear losing authority or respect. They believe that admitting mistakes will make them appear weak. In reality, the opposite is often true, and genuine respect grows when people show honesty, self-awareness, and emotional responsibility. The strongest relationships are not those without conflict. They are the ones where both individuals prioritize understanding over pride. They recognize that emotional maturity protects the bond between them. It allows both people to feel heard, respected, and valued. When ego repeatedly wins over maturity, the emotional environment of the relationship becomes exhausting. Conversations feel like battle and sighs. Silence replaces communication. Eventually, the connection that once felt natural begins to feel heavy and strained. People who experience this dynamic often reach a moment of realization. They begin to see that pride has cost them something meaningful. The arguments they once believed they won now appear insignificant compared to the distance that has formed. Emotional maturity requires continuous self-awareness. It asks individuals to question their reactions, to reflect on their behavior, and to choose growth over defensiveness. This process is not always comfortable, but it is necessary for maintaining deep and healthy connections. Ego seeks validation through dominance, while maturity seeks harmony through understanding. One protects pride, the other protects the relationship. And over time, the difference between these two choices becomes visible in the quality of the connection. When someone consistently chooses maturity, the relationship becomes a place of safety and growth. When ego repeatedly takes control, the relationship becomes fragile, slowly weakened by unresolved tension. The quiet truth is that relationships rarely end because of one large mistake. More often, they fade under the pressure of repeated moments where pride was chosen over empathy. Each small decision builds the emotional direction of the connection. Choosing emotional maturity does not mean abandoning self-respect. It means recognizing that real strength lies in understanding, accountability, and compassion. It means valuing the relationship enough to let go of the need to always appear right. And in the long run, the people who learn to quiet their ego are often the ones who build the deepest, most meaningful connections in their lives. Realizing the value of someone only after losing them is one of the most painful lessons people experience in relationships. It is a realization that arrives quietly, often long after the moment that caused the separation. At first, the loss may not even feel real. Life continues, distractions appear, and the mind convinces itself that everything will eventually return to normal. But time has a way of revealing truths that were once ignored. When someone is constantly present in life, their presence can begin to feel permanent. Their care, their attention, their loyalty become part of everyday routine. Messages are expected, support is assumed, and patience is taken as something that will always exist. Over time, familiarity slowly hides the true value of what is being given. People often recognize effort more clearly when it disappears. The quiet gestures that once felt ordinary suddenly become memories. The small acts of kindness that once went unnoticed start to appear meaningful. A voice that was once heard every day becomes silence, and in that silence, awareness begins to grow. At the beginning of a relationship, appreciation usually feels natural. Everything seems new and special. Conversations are exciting. Attention is constant, and both people are careful with each other's emotions. But as time passes, comfort enters the relationship. Comfort itself is not harmful, but when comfort turns into carelessness, appreciation slowly fades. The mind begins to assume that love will remain no matter what happens. People start believing that loyalty means endless patience. They think that the other person will always understand, always forgive, and always stay. Because of this assumption, effort decreases, words become less thoughtful, time becomes less intentional, and gratitude slowly disappears. This is how genuine value becomes invisible. Not because it was never important, but because it was always there. When something is always present, the human mind begins to treat it like a certainty rather than a gift. The moment of realization rarely arrives immediately after loss. In many cases, it comes slowly. Days pass, routines change, and at first there may even be a sense of relief or independence. But eventually, certain moments begin to trigger memories. A familiar place, a song, a quiet evening. Suddenly, the absence becomes noticeable. It is in these quiet moments that people begin to remember details they once ignored us. The way someone listened carefully, the way they showed patience during difficult conversations, the way they supported dreams without expecting anything in return. These memories begin to reveal the depth of what once existed. Regret often grows from these reflections. The mind starts asking questions that cannot be answered. Why was that kindness overlooked? Why were those efforts treated as ordinary? Why did appreciation come too late? These questions do not always lead to clear answers, but they highlight the emotional cost of taking someone's presence for granted. Realizing value after loss also exposes the difference between temporary attention and genuine care. Many people encounter individuals who offer excitement but not stability. Others bring intensity but not loyalty. Genuine love, however, is often quiet and consistent. It does not always create dramatic moments, but it builds a sense of emotional safety. Unfortunately, people sometimes overlook stability while chasing excitement. They search for something that feels more thrilling without recognizing that peace itself is a rare gift. Only after losing that peace do they understand its true importance. Another reason realization comes late is emotional maturity. Not everyone has the awareness to recognize sincere love when they experience it. Sometimes people are distracted by personal ambitions, social influences, or their own unresolved emotions. In these moments, they fail to see the deepness of what someone is offering. With time, experience changes perspective. As people grow older or face different relationships, they begin to compare what they once had with what they encounter later. It is during these comparisons that the past becomes clearer. They start to understand that the patience, loyalty, and sincerity they once overlooked were not common qualities. Loss has a powerful way of sharpening perception. It removes distractions and forces reflection. When someone is no longer present, their actions are remembered without the everyday familiarity that once hid their value. This realization can bring both sadness and growth. Sadness because something meaningful was lost, and growth because the lesson becomes unforgettable. People who experience this kind of regret often become more aware in future relationships. They learn to recognize effort sooner and appreciate sincerity more deeply. However, the pain of late realization lies in the fact that some opportunities cannot be recreated. Time moves forward and people change. From someone who was once patient may no longer be willing to return to a place where they felt unappreciated. Growth often leads individuals to protect their peace more carefully. From a distance, people sometimes witness the transformation of someone they once had in their lives. They see confidence where there was once vulnerability. They see strength where there was once quiet patience. This transformation can intensify the realization of what was lost. What was once familiar now appears rare. What was once ignored now seems extraordinary. But appreciation that arrives after separation cannot always repair what was broken. The human mind tends to learn deeply from emotional experiences. When someone realizes the value of a person too late, it creates a lasting awareness about relationships. It teaches that genuine care should never be treated casually. It shows that loyalty is not guaranteed forever. True appreciation requires presence and awareness in the moment. It requires recognizing that someone's effort is not an obligation but a choice they make every day. When people understand this truth early, they treat relationships with greater care. But when appreciation comes only after loss, it becomes a quiet reminder of how easily something meaningful can slip away. The memory of that connection remains not as sometimes that can be relived, but as a lesson that shapes the way future relationships are viewed. Realizing the value of someone after losing them often changes the way people see love itself. They begin to understand that the most important qualities in a relationship are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes the greatest love appears in simple, steady actions that are easy to overlook when they are constantly present. And once someone learns that lesson through loss, the awareness never completely disappears. It stays in the background of every future connection, reminding them that genuine love should never have to disappear before its value is truly understood. Watching silent growth from a distance can be one of the most complex emotional experiences a person faces after a relationship ends. It is a strange mixture of reflection, realization, and quiet observation. There is no direct conversation, no shared moments anymore. Yet the awareness of change becomes visible over time. Growth begins to appear in subtle ways, and witnessing it from afar can stir emotions that are difficult to ignore. In the beginning, separation often creates a sense of finality. Life moves in different directions, routines change, and communication disappears. For a while, it may feel like both lives have completely separated. But in today's world, distance does not always mean complete invisibility. All glimpses through social spaces, shared connections, or occasional updates reveal pieces of someone's life. These glimpses slowly paint a picture of transformation. At first, the changes might seem small: a new confidence in the way someone carries themselves, a different energy in their words, a stronger sense of purpose in the way they approach life. These details may appear ordinary to others, but to someone who once shared a deep connection, they are very noticeable. They reveal that something inside has shifted. Growth after emotional pain often happens quietly. It is rarely announced or displayed dramatically. It is rarely announced or displayed dramatically. It begins in private moments where someone chooses healing instead of bitterness, reflection instead of blame. The person who once carried disappointment or heartbreak begins to rebuild their sense of self. They learn new boundaries, new priorities, and a deeper understanding of their own worth. From a distance, these changes can feel both admirable and unsettling. Admiration comes from seeing someone become stronger, more confident, and more focused. But there can also be an underlying realization that this growth happened without shared involvement. The transformation occurred independently, without the connection that once existed. Silent growth often carries a certain dignity. It is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about rebuilding life with patience and intention. When someone chooses to focus on personal improvement rather than dwelling on the past, their progress becomes visible over time. Confidence replaces uncertainty. Peace replaces emotional chaos. Observing this transformation from afar can trigger reflection. Memories of the past begin to surface. Moments that once felt ordinary start to appear meaningful. The way someone handled difficult situations, the patience they showed, the quiet strength they carried during challenging times, these qualities become clearer when viewed through the lens of time. Distance has a way of sharpening perspective. When people are no longer part of each other's daily lives, they begin to see the bigger picture. The emotional noise of past conflicts fades, leaving behind a clearer understanding of who someone truly was and who they have become. Watching someone grow without being part of that journey can create a sense of quiet humility. It reveals that people are capable of evolving beyond the roles they once played in a relationship. But it's sometimes someone who once felt misunderstood or underestimated may now appear confident and self-assured. The person who once tolerated emotional pain may now demonstrate stronger boundaries. Both often comes from lessons learned during difficult experiences. Heartbreak, disappointment, and loss can become powerful teachers. When someone chooses to reflect on those experiences rather than remain trapped by them, they begin to build a stronger version of themselves. From a distance, this evolution can feel almost symbolic. It represents the passage of time and the changes that naturally occur when people move forward with their lives. It shows that pain does not always lead to bitterness. Sometimes it leads to maturity and clarity. For the observer, this process can awaken mixed emotions. There may be pride in seeing someone thrive. There may also be a quiet awareness that the opportunity to grow together no longer exists. The past that was once shared has divided into separate journeys. Silent growth does not erase the past is understood. It reveals that relationships can shape people in ways that continue long after the connection ends. The lessons learned during those experiences become part of personal development. Watching someone evolve also highlights the difference between who they once were and where they have become. The person who once tolerated certain situations may now approach life with greater confidence and independence. The emotional resilience they have built becomes visible in the way they navigate new challenges. Growth is rarely immediate. New challenges, it unfolds gradually through consistent effort.